We were at a thing a couple of weeks ago. Tino remembered that first meeting by saying that. And the reason I had said that, because, you know, again, when you're managing and you're working in the game, and I broadcast for 6 years, you're always noticing stuff in all sports. You know, teams win championships and all of a sudden they disappear, you know, and they don't show up the next year. And again, it's tougher to win more than once because aside from having to get better to stay the same, you have other teams that'll always save their best pitcher for you, and it's a lot tougher. But our players, you know, they never stop to admire what they've done, and that was pretty special.
Well, Lee's point was that, you know, all the things that you did to make the Yankees successful, you had done with the Mets, but they just couldn't get it done. Nobody ever really wants to admit who is their favorite. I mean, you know, Lombardi would never choose favorites, but it was apparent to everybody on the team that there was a special place in his heart, say, for Paul Hornung.
Mm-hmm.
So they won those 5 championships in 7 seasons, and Hornung could get away with things that other guys wouldn't get away with. And in Hornung, Lombardi saw kind of an alter ego, a guy who could do the things that he couldn't do and have the fun that he didn't have. Who was the guy deep in your heart who just made you the most proud, most happy as a manager?
I just retired.
Derek.
Mariano.
I mean, Mariano, yeah, but, you know, I put him in 2 categories. You have players and you have pitchers. You know, Mariano, obviously, you can't win a game unless you finish it. And nobody did it better than him. And I don't think there'll ever be somebody who'll do it better than him for as long as he did it. But Derek, as a 21-year-old, didn't have a particularly good spring that first year when I was told he was going to be my shortstop. And there was talk within the organization, well, maybe he's not ready, you know, and it got to the point where we were talking about that the last 10 days of spring training. I said, it's too late. You know, we'll throw him out there and see what happens. And he just, you know, hit a home run and made a great catch opening day and never looked back. But he came to work every day. I remember his second year after winning Rookie of the Year and winning the World Series. I called him in. We were in Toronto one day, and I called him in. I said, I told Zim I wanted to have this conversation just about, you know, about priorities because, you know, he's single, good looking, wins Rookie of the Year, wins the World Series. How tough is this stuff, you know? And I asked him, I told him, I said, I'm just concerned that, you know, after all the successes you had last year, that, you know, sometimes you take things for granted. And never had to have another conversation in that regard after that.
That was it?
Yeah, I mean, baseball's always been his life. He never, took me a long time to figure out how to give him a day off, because I used to say, how about taking a day off? He said, no, I'm all right, Mr. T, don't worry about it. And then finally I wised up after, I don't know how many years, probably 7 or 8 years, and I said, which day do you want, this one or this one?
You're getting one.
Where he had to take a choice, but he, you know, he just was very special, very special.
It's obviously, it's been called many times, a game of inches, and so much depends on circumstance, sometimes on luck, whether it's the residue of design or not. If Leyritz doesn't hit the home run off of bowlers, how does that change, you think, the trajectory of not only the Yankees, but your life?
Well, I probably would have gone back to broadcasting because George wasn't going to be. That was my first year. I would have probably had one more year because he didn't expect to get to the World Series that year, and I may have gotten a free ticket.
Alomar hits one the next year.
Yeah, Alomar hits the next year. But I'll tell you, I mean, remember we started '98 off. Losing 3 out of the first 4 or 4 out of the first 5 on the road.
Another one until August.
and all of a sudden there was talk about George, firing me, and we won the last 2 games on that road trip, and again we wind up winning 114 games in the season, 125 including the World Series. It was
Good year.
I remember I had never been successful on my birthday, you know, as a player or as a manager. In fact, I was so bad on my birthday as a manager. We had a 11-0 lead when I was managing the Cardinals, and we were tied game by the 5th inning. Yeah, I swear to God.
That's quite impressive.
But I remember mentioning that to somebody, and they said to me, "You won on everybody's birthday in '98."
Do you remember that moment when Jimmy hit the home run?
Oh, you kidding? It was unbelievable. And what, you know, you're sitting there on the bench questioning Wallers, who came to us later on, because Leyritz just couldn't catch up with the fastball, because he kept and the way you know this is, you know, he's fouling the ball off over the other side of the field dugout, so he's really not getting to the fastball.
But he never lacked confidence.
No. No, Jimmy never lacked. And again, you know, I'm a believer in your mind rules your body, and there's a lot of times, and I can tell you, I'll give you a Leyritz story in a second. And for some reason, Wallers figured he'd do something different. He threw him a slider and left it here. And
History.
it's unbelievable. All of a sudden, the game's tie, and you know, we were pretty, you know, pretty tough getting to the extra innings and win the game. But Leyritz, I remember, he came back. He left and came back. That's probably the proudest stuff that's happened during my time managing the Yankees. You had Wells, you had Leyritz, you had Jeff Nelson, all bitched and moaned about something or other, blaming me for whatever, which, you know, I have no problem with that. I mean, I never try to tell people how to think. They have to, you know, I do what I do, and if they feel they've been dealt with unfairly, then I'm sorry. But they all came back, you know, so that stuff makes me feel good. But Leyritz in '99, he comes back as a backup player for us. And I called him and I said, "Jimmy, we're not including you in the first round of the playoffs. You know, but I don't know what's going to happen." And I didn't. What was going to happen the next round or the World Series if we got there. So I'm going home. I said, well, if you go home, then you have no chance of getting into the next round or the shorter World Series. You got to stay here with the team, otherwise, well, he winds up staying, and he winds up hitting the last home run of the century. You know, in 9th inning or 8th inning against the Braves in '99.
I remember I was at Yankee Stadium in Pete Rose. It was the first time